What an incredible weekend of fights. I mean, even outside of the UFC, we're going to start with this. We had the biggest fight of 2023 in boxing, Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford to unify the welterweight titles. Just for some housekeeping before we get into the actual fight for people who don't know, Errol Spence coming in 28-0, WBA, WBC, and IBF welterweight champion, and then Terence Crawford 39-0. WBO welterweight champion. These two guys have been on a collision course for years now. Me and you have talked about it a few times. We finally got the fight, and I would say that it lived up to the hype, but not in the way that we were expecting. But because Terence Crawford goes to 40-0, wins via TKO in round 9, and just has the performance of a lifetime. What did you think of this one, man?
Oh yeah, man. Like I thought, it was about as good as like you could ask for. Like, of course, if you're gonna get a performance like that from one guy, like, dude, that's the kind of performance you're looking for there, straight out of Terrence Crawford. Yeah, man. And so yeah, like I hope a lot of more casual based fans like got to catch that and just really be in that moment, just like that greatness, just like the aura of that fight just in general coming in, and then for it to like play out like that, because man, like you know you can feel how you feel about Terrence Crawford, but man, like dude,
Can't say anything
that's a
about it
super
anymore.
fight, man. Like super, like it's real, like yeah, man. Like it's really easy to just be straight down the middle with fights like that. So
I
um
mean, the odds were super close coming in. Even Vegas
yeah,
had no
man.
clue what was
Like
going to happen. I
you
mean,
gotta teeter like carefully with fights like that, man. It's
it was
so
an
close.
unknown for both, too, because neither of them have fought that many guys who are so good at Southpaw. And they were talking about that even right before the fight. And that's like one of those things that coming in, you really have no gauge on how to like judge that. And it seems like Errol Spence just had so many problems. I don't really know if it was because he was in Southpaw, but Crawford's movement the whole time was impacting him, and the speed was just on another level, which I didn't really expect. It looked like after rounds like
Well,
two or three, Spence was on
We
quicksand.
knew Terrence Crawford was strong, but like, man, like, dude, you would think he was straight out of a freaking like movie from what he was what he was displaying there. Like to overwhelm a guy like Errol Spence like that, man, like that says a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure, dude. It just
legacy cemented as far as I'm concerned.
40-0 now, and now he's the
Yeah, to get to
undisputed welterweight champ.
40 and oh,
Beating a guy like Spence too, like people don't realize that. Like
unifying the belts, man.
there's haters that just say maybe Spence wasn't as good as people thought he was. That is not true.
Yeah.
Like Terrence Crawford, people need to understand, just made that look easy, which is
Well,
nuts.
yeah.
It's so nuts.
We could go all day about how fickle fight fans tend to be, and so yeah,
Someone's
this
always
is
the best guy until they lose, and you're like, he sucked. Like,
yeah,
okay,
they always gotta find those edges to exploit, but nah, man, not here. You
no.
can't let it happen here, bro. This fight is too big. It was too anticipated and long overdue to be doing that, and just like you just gotta give all your flowers to Bud Crawford, man.
I mean, it was a truly just special performance. The jab looked incredible from round 2 on. It was giving Spence so many problems. It was the beginning of all those combinations that Crawford was landing later in the fight. You were talking about the power too. He just looked better in
Dude,
every way. Like it was unbelievable.
that was a ridiculous display of just like he just and you would think like the entire like just one edge of the ring is just completely cut off, and against Errol Spence obviously, and
Who's a
just
pressure fighter? Like
exactly
it's
like
unbelievable, man.
so yeah, when you got a fight behind, and because he had the knockdown too, like that knockdown in round 2, like that was not to say a turning point obviously, but
I'd say the
it happened.
knockdowns in round 7 were the bigger turning points, considering there were two of them at that point.
Exactly,
That one was
exactly.
crazy.
So man, like this fight like this, man, is just like so exhilarating, and just like why you gotta hold your breath just like every second of every round, cause
Is it just me or we're getting more and more of these now in boxing? Like I feel like we're having more pods where we get to talk about these huge fights that are actually happening now. No one's in the way.
Exactly. All it takes is just weeding out the politics and all that, and just
Top rank.
exactly
Literally
the
though.
semantics, whatever, man, and
Well,
just
'cause
letting these dudes.
when Crawford was at Top Rank this fight, that was like when we were talking about this fight as a dream fight and thinking that it was not going to happen or not going to happen anytime soon. And now that Crawford is on his own and out of the Top Rank umbrella, now we get the
Yeah.
biggest fight of 2023, and Crawford proves what he's been trying to prove his whole career, that he is the man. Now you can't take that away from him. He's the undisputed welterweight champ. I'd say the world is his oyster right now around his weight class because he's the guy. He's the man who beat the man. Errol Spence had more of the titles at the time going into this fight.
Beat the man to be the man.
I'm so impressed, man. And I've been a big fan of Bud Crawford for a few years, like now really going back. And I've seen a lot of people hate on him, saying that Errol Spence was going to beat the brakes off of him. And man, were they wrong. And it feels good because I'm not hating on Errol Spence. I like him too. But I'm a big fan of Crawford, and I'm happy to see him finally get the credit that he actually deserves. And he proved it and then some, I'd say, in this fight. I can't even imagine what could be next for him that would be on the same level as this one in terms of the hype coming in. Now that we know what we know about Crawford, and considering that he's the best right now at this weight class.
Yeah.
So that was a cool way to kind of start this pod, because it was almost like, if you're an MMA fan, it was almost an afterthought, because UFC 291 was literally insane. So we'll start off with just the BMF title fight, I guess, and that's probably the last time I'm going to mention the BMF title through this pod, because I don't want it to ruin the fight. Because some people were hating on this fight because of that, and I'm like, people got to look past the BMF belt and just acknowledge that we're getting a rematch of an awesome fight.
Yeah.
And honestly, this one, in a way, kind of lived up to the hype because it was fun while it lasted, but then the knockout, dude, just came out of nowhere. that right high kick by Gaethje, man, just, I don't even know where to begin with this one, because it was competitive while it lasted, but the finish by Gaethje, I think, kind of negates everything at that point. And you know, he wins the BMF belt, whatever you guys think of that. But now I think he's one step closer to getting back towards the lightweight title. But before we get into all that, just how did you feel about Gaethje's performance in this rematch?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you, like in the sense, like the finish, like took me aback. It's just like so sudden, like blink and you'll miss it. Like, you know, man, like some of these nicknames for these guys, like, you know, for the most part, like they are very fitting for the like who the fighter is. And like this case, bro, the highlight, like, dude, he just keeps finding ways to just boom, put out a fight like that. Get your hand raised, do the backflip off the cage.
Might also be the first right high kick I've seen him throw in his whole career like that, like a roundhouse kick. I don't think I've ever seen him just land one like that. We're used to seeing him knock people out with his hands, and man, I mean, that was one of those types of shots, when it hits, it hits. Poirier just got starched.
Yeah, man, there's really just like, it's just a good thing. Like, there was a lot of respect going in, and then a lot of respect, you know, afterwards between these two, because a finish like that, like, you know, you can't be, there's no denying it, there's no question. That's as clean as it gets right there. As clean as a whistle. So
I was really impressed with Gaethje's composure in this fight versus the first fight, because in the first one, he was landing with like reckless abandonment, and then just gassed out in rounds like 3 and 4 in that fight.
Well, even in this fight, like, you know, he was letting the hands go quite a bit.
But like, I would say though, he wasn't throwing with like that total power where he was gonna gas out after like 3 punches. Like in the other fight versus Poirier, he was throwing crazy leg kicks, like with full power behind him, bombs like he was throwing in this fight with his hands. But besides
Justin Gaethje, to me, if, at least for as long as I've been watching, has never been someone that's come off as someone that has just that glaring weakness that every, you know, opponent of his tries to exploit. It's just, okay, from fight to fight, there's probably going to be something that you're looking at that might need that fine-tuning. And then obviously with the gym he trains with and whatnot, like, as talented as he is already, like, I just, you know, he keeps, like you just saw, he keeps finding ways to just wow you. And Yeah, man, like he looks great. So it's just good. Yeah, like you said, like one step closer to getting back to that lightweight title contention. So
I hope he does get there. I mean, he's such an exciting fighter. I don't know if it goes any differently versus a guy like Islam, but Charles Oliveira is going to
it
be
would be a
fighting for the
fun.
belt.
It would be a fun fight. Like, yeah, I think with any of these guys at the top, like, there's still a fun fight to be had somewhere.
The thing with Gaethje that's so interesting, and you kind of like alluded to it, he doesn't have like many glaring weaknesses, but like he isn't that great on the ground, but you have to go through hell to even get him there. And he does have a good defensive wrestling background, so it's tough because like the one thing that you can exploit is probably the hardest path to beat him, just because you're gonna have to close the distance on a guy like that who hits like a train to try and get to his hips or even just get to the clinch. And in the clinch, he's dangerous too because he has those hooks that he throws. It's just so hard to beat a guy like that. And unless you're a guy like Islam or someone who's such a strong wrestler that they can get through it, it's tough, man. It really is tough. I mean, even Khabib had problems in the fight where he fought him. Remember, he was getting hit with a lot of leg kicks early on.
Yeah.
But, man, this was such an impressive performance. Like I said, the composure for me is really what stuck out. Just because he didn't seem like he was going to be gassed out. When you watch that first fight, after watching the first round, you're like, one of these guys is probably not going to last the whole fight. This fight looked a lot more measured on both sides, I'd say.
I think definitely, like, the closer we got, that just, that intuition just kept growing more and more. Just because kind of just, like, just because of, I think, it being, like, obviously the BMF title is not a real fucking belt that they're fighting for, but just like
technically though
it's still exactly, it's still a title. Like, this dude's
he's holding
still walking around with that belt over his shoulder, and obviously we know what the acronym stands for. So like, I think definitely, like, just the excitement just grew more and more, and just like, yeah, man, I think, like, once again, like, you saw the respect obviously going in. And then, like, yeah, I think they were just all about putting on a show for, the crowd and just all of us fans. And exactly, for what it was worth, like, that's exactly what happened. And yeah, just like, obviously, and then the respect coming out of it as well between the two. Like, obviously, like, yeah, obviously, you don't want to see, like, like Dustin Poirier take a loss like that. But, I think obviously he's gonna be fine regardless. Like, at this point, like, what does Dustin Poirier have left to really prove? So.
I'm not gonna lie, the fight that I want to see for both guys, and I don't know if this is like a popular answer. I've seen it in some spots, but I want to see a trilogy because like there's no real place for either of them to go. You know what I'm saying? Because they've both fought for the title multiple times. I wouldn't say that this one should get Gaethje a title shot like right away. Gaethje doesn't want to fight Conor McGregor. I don't even really want to give Conor that time because him just talking shit afterwards just looked terrible.
Justin, I'll slap you around.
Yeah. He was probably pacing around his living room like a fan in that fight, honestly.
Dude, it's like, like, you ever just like feel like something, like you feel something is inevitable, but when it happens, like, you're still just like, you still just have that reaction. You're not even just like numb to it, just like, okay, exactly what I expected, because I was dying when I saw the tweet, man. It's just like, of course.
And I'm not saying I have no interest in it, because obviously if this fight got booked, I'd be hyped as fuck. But as of right now, like, I just don't feel like Conor McGregor should get a fight like this.
No.
I think Gaethje, he did hit him with a nice little shot. I don't know if you heard him say, most guys, I think he said, actually, I don't want to say this. I don't want to misquote him.
Dude, as far as I'm concerned, anyways, Justin Gaethje is way more of a fan favorite and probably a draw right now than Conor McGregor.
No chance. No chance.
So not a fan favorite either?
No way. No way.
All right. Yeah,
Conor McGregor's, you got it.
I get it.
To us, maybe, like, Gaethje's fought so many fights in the UFC now that have been bangers. But to the casual fans, McGregor is like the king.
That's right.
I mean, dude, I had people asking me when he was going to fight Khabib again after Khabib retired. I'm like, yeah, he's going to come back out for Conor, though, right? I'm like, no. Not even a chance.
It's like, that's the thing with Conor McGregor though, it's like you have to either be all in or all out. So like for instance, this freaking just absolute flop of a Ultimate Fighter season between him and Michael Chandler as the coaches, and then obviously this fight that hasn't even been officially announced yet, and it's like
might not be. I don't even know.
Why should we have any reason to care about Conor McGregor right
Well,
now?
I do agree with that. Like, I will say this. I'm not saying that I disagree with you, but when I'm thinking about the whole like MMA fan base, Conor McGregor is still definitely that guy, and he's gonna get those million pay-per-view buys every single time.
He's gonna get the clicks and whatnot one way or another. It's just it's just like fight, dude.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna focus on him. I'm gonna focus on Justin Gaethje. And like I said, what do you think though about me bringing up the trilogy fight? Because I'll explain a little more though, because we kind of got sidetracked by the McGregor thing. Yeah. Neither guy I don't think is that much closer to a title. I mean, obviously Poirier is not closer to a title with this, but Gaethje, I'm not sure you could just give him another shot right away. And that's why I kind of want to see them do it again, because it's 1-1. Poirier said he'd be down to do it at some point. Gaethje said he wouldn't deny it because Poirier didn't deny him, which is such a classy response. I do want to say that. Like, because Gaethje could easily just be like, nah, we're good now, and I'm going to try and fight for the title. I'm not going to go backwards. And that's what I'm saying. I just would love to see this again. I mean, every time these guys step into the cage, it's going to be chaos, right?
Yeah.
So why not? You know what I mean? You just said, like, Poirier, there's nothing really left to prove. Like, yeah, he hasn't won the belt, but he's beaten so many guys. He's fought so many killers in his career at 45 and 55. Why not, man? Like, why not give us this last big trilogy? Even if it's not like a headliner, even if you want to make it a co-main, just one more, man. Like, I want to see who takes it. That's just me as a fan.
Yeah, man. I think it could headline an event too. So like, shit. Like, yeah, dude, right? And then obviously, like, the stakes here could be even more substantial than just the BMF title. So
I mean, this time it could be a genuine title eliminator. If maybe not as much for Poirier, but for Gaethje. But then if you think about it, if Poirier beats Gaethje, he's right back. So I still think it's equally advantageous for both people. I'm not sure if they want to do it right away. I mean, I don't think there was really any clear option.
Well, we're talking about it right here, right now. So without, that being said, like, let's do it right away.
Let's make it happen.
As soon as possible. Let's do it.
Let's talk about this co-main event, man, because there's been some chatter about it that I'm curious to see what you thought, because me and you haven't really talked about it before. Alex Pereira beats Jan Blachowicz via split decision. Two of the judges gave Pereira rounds 2 and 3, and then the other judge gave Jan rounds 1 and 3. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll say there's been some talk about robbery. What do you think of that?
No, I think it's just sure. Like, if you really have the time on your hands and the devotion to a debate that arguing that it was a robbery, a clear robbery, then okay, like maybe someone can, like, maybe I could entertain it, but I think it's silly either way, honestly. Like, just, I would preface, like, hey, like, before whatever you say, like, I think it's silly that you're even arguing this. So just for me, like, I think it just came down to who really steered the direction of the fight, and that was Alex Pereira. I think, like, without a doubt. I think he was more assertive. He was more effective with the striking. Obviously, he's already just naturally a ridiculous grappler, and he held his own there. And that was really all there was to it. So my opinion's pretty much similar. I'm glad you do agree with that, by the way, though. Because when I first saw the robbery talk, I was still watching Spence versus Crawford, so I went back and watched this fight after the pay-per-view ended. Yeah.
And this is, like, with the mindset, like, okay, a lot of people think Jan won. So, like, whether I think it or not, you're probably, like, a little psychologically disposed to lean that way a little bit when you see all these people saying that it's a robbery. But I watched this fight, and I'm like, I wouldn't say it was super clear, but I thought it was clearer than most fights that Pereira got 29-28 in this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people were talking about Jan's wrestling, and that's a fair argument. Kind of like what you were saying. I would start by saying I don't understand why you're even arguing about this, but I get it in a way. Like, I see what you're talking about with the wrestling.
Exactly.
But when he's just on top of him and he's barely doing anything, and he's holding him down for not really half the... Like, round 1 was Jan's. I think that's pretty clear. But round 2 was a clear Alex Pereira round. And then round 3 was the one I think was the debatable one, but not that debatable because on the feet, Pereira was lighting him up. And on the ground, Jan wasn't doing much with that position, and he wasn't even in it for half the round.
Yeah.
So I don't see that. I don't know why so many people felt so strongly about it. Like, I could understand if you thought that Jan won, but I don't understand people going like, this is one of the worst robberies of the year. I'm like, where do you see that? Like, I know some people value control time more than others. I know me and you are more a fan of damage, as I think should be in a fight. You know what I mean? It's not a wrestling match at the end of the day. I mean, wrestling matters, but he wasn't exactly negating any of Pereira's striking. You know what I'm saying? If he was actually stopping Pereira from landing any damage, then we could have that debate. But every time this fight was on the feet, you could tell who was winning. And on the ground, yes, Pereira was controlling, or Jan was controlling Pereira, but each time he got up, so it's... I don't know. I just think that this one's not the right argument for a robbery. I don't see it because on the feet, the kickboxing from Alex looked as good as it usually looks, and I think he looked a little bit more tentative in this fight. You know, from a guy who pressures like he does. But
you know, maybe it being Pereira's, you know, obviously his lightweight debut. Maybe people want to. Yeah, light heavyweight.
That dude's fighting at 155. He's gonna have to cut half his body off, dude.
Maybe some people want to shortchange him, like obviously taking on a former champion in the division and Jan Blachowicz. And the fight sure was close enough, but I think that, like, you know, and obviously for us, for, you know, people like us too, who are as outspoken, you know, about judging in certain scorecards as we are, like, I think I got it right with this one.
That's what I'm saying. Like, by the rules, damage, then, let me, you know what, I'm going to read it because I want to read it. Like, the official scoring criteria that they say before every single fight card, you know what I'm talking about? Like, the very beginning of the pay-per-views. I should have looked this up beforehand, but I wasn't expecting to just quote it verbatim. But anyway, like, effective striking and grappling, then aggressiveness and octagon control. And I wouldn't, like, you could argue, I get it, that Jan Blachowicz technically had effective grappling, but are you saying that his grappling was more effective than Alex's striking? I don't know about that one, man.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. With more ground and pound or maybe some submission attempts, I think you could make the argument, but I'm not here for it, honestly.
I mean, you know, there was, I would say, you know, flashes of ground and pound in the first round. Like, there was a notable hammer fist there, and
see, but no one's debating that round, though. Like, people are talking about the third.
Dude.
I don't.
Yeah, I'm trying to, like, really, like.
I watched that fight 3 times, dude, trying to see like where they were coming from, and I like I said, I see it a little bit with the control time, but if that's all you got, that's not enough for me. And at that point, I think we're just agreeing to disagree with those people. But the next part of the conversation that I kind of wanted to pivot to is, you know, now that Pereira has a win at 205, albeit a somewhat controversial one, does he get a fight for the vacant title off of this?
Wow.
I mean, it's a real question.
Yeah, man. Jeez. I think the next, you know, marquee light heavyweight fight that gets booked, we should come back. At least for my case, we should come back and we should bring this question back up, because just like, you know, this division, dude, like, it's so hard to, like, just, like, get such an accurate gauge on it because of how much turmoil, like, it's been under recently, and how in flux
injuries, draws, like, just so many
John Jones
wild
effect,
things
like,
happening.
it's freaking lingering now. He's not there anymore, and now, like, the title is, vacant has held the title more than an actual person, it feels like. So.
That's probably true. I don't know the exact numbers, but I would guarantee you're probably right. I just think it's funny, and in a way, it just shows how great John Jones is. I know I've said that before, but every week that passes, you really just see it more and more with the uncertainty in this division. And you're like, John Jones ruled it for years. And if it wasn't for the legal troubles and the PED troubles, you could argue that he would have ran it for even longer. So, yeah. And to go back to the title fight conversation with Pereira, I agree with you that it's not easy to predict. But just with my personal opinion, I don't know if it merits a title shot. Like, I get that he beat one of the top 5 205ers in the UFC, but I don't know. I think a lot of people might be a little mad at it just because of how this fight went. Personally, I would love to see Pereira versus Ankalaev in a title eliminator, and then the winner of that fights Yuri for the vacant title. And I know that's pushing it a bit, but I don't really know when Yuri is supposed to be ready anyway. That's supposed to be like, September at this point? And I don't think there's any harm in giving him like another couple months while the division kind of shakes itself back out. I don't know. Right now, we don't have a clear guy at 205. And it's funny because we have 2 of them, but they're both hurt. And John Jones is at heavyweight. That would be the third, I guess. And Adesanya maybe is another, but is anyone really clamoring for that right now? Maybe if Pereira becomes the champion. But then even at that point, he said he's not as interested in fighting him at 205. He said if he wants that MMA trilogy, he wants it at 185, which I kind of respect, by the way.
It is pretty badass.
Yeah, like the fact that he's willing to go back down and cut all that weight just to fight him another time. Yeah. He really has some sort of vendetta against Israel Adesanya, man. I don't know. It's really funny to me, but I'm a big fan of Poatan, and I'm rooting for him no matter what. I'll say this, I wouldn't be mad if he got a title fight next, but I don't think he necessarily deserves it right from this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm with you right now as well. But I think, let's see where, I think at least when the next fight gets booked, I think some things will be a little bit more clear. But even just after that fight, I don't know, maybe if Jan won, straight up, I think
you could have argued with him.
Yeah, it's a pretty, more simple talking point, but I think
it's just tough because Pereira, this was his debut.
Exactly.
And it didn't look that great. And I don't even think it was because of the weight.
It's a big, it's a big win, dude.
Huge win. I mean, you just beat a former champ in your first fight in the weight class. It's pretty impressive, man. I get the argument, like I said, for thinking he didn't win, but I don't agree with it. So if Pereira gets the title fight, I'm not opposed to it.
We can definitely shut the book on that.
I don't know, man. We'll see who gets the shot at 205. Like you were saying, I really don't think there's any way to accurately judge who it's going to be. Although I think Yuri will probably be one of the people in that fight. We don't know when. But something that was pretty clear was Derek Lewis's finish over Marcos Rogerio de Lima. This fight was originally on the prelims, I believe, and then it got moved to the main card when Wonderboy versus Michel Tejeda got scrapped because of Michel's weight miss. But Derek Lewis, man, I want to start with this because going into this fight, I saw a lot of people saying, and in a way I kind of agree with this a little bit, that De Lima might have been able to just overwhelm Lewis in the beginning, more with the grappling. Talk about flipping the script, dude. Derek Lewis coming out, throwing a flying knee, dropping him right off the bat. For a second there, I thought Masvidal's record got broken. And he said that afterwards. But he landed that, and I thought the fight was going to be over. But then there was some ground and pound. It ended up being a little under, I think, 30 seconds. Just unreal performance for Derek Lewis. Just when you think that it might be over, he just does something like this, and then boom, he's right back in the heavyweight title picture. It's unreal. I was so impressed. I wish there was more to talk about technique-wise in this fight, but even Derek Lewis said, hell no. He didn't plan that flying knee. He just wanted to throw some bullshit and see if it hits. So respect to him for that. Congrats to him as well. I want to look into the cameras as I say this, just on the off chance that Derek Lewis ever sees this. congrats on that six-pack, man. We know he's been grinding on that six-pack for a long time. He said it in the media day. Everybody was kind of laughing at him, and he got on the scales at 263.5 and had a tiny bit of a six-pack, man. So good job, man. I'm happy for Derek Lewis on that one. But where do you think that this fight places Derek in the grand scheme of heavyweight right now? Because we've talked about how that division too is in flux for different reasons than 205, but right now we have a lot of contenders at heavyweight that are hungry to get to that title, and Derek Lewis is hungry to get back to
Well, I'll say this. You know, it's good. It's good to see, especially in that fashion too, because you know maybe even if he did win, and you know, obviously you know it either ends up going the distance or whatever. Like it just ends up being obviously way closer than obviously it ended up being, or he just outright loses. You know, like would this have been surely like without a doubt Derek Lewis's last fight? So I think with this, like, hey man, like we are gonna see Derek Lewis for at least another fight, maybe at least
So
for another
awesome.
fight, and
I'm like laughing just because it
exactly.
was so unreal. Like I talk about something that I was not expecting to see. Just Derek Lewis starting a fight with a flying knee and landing it. Just
Yeah.
unreal. He's definitely more athletic though than people give him credit for. Like he's thrown some flying kicks before and landed some big shots. He's something else. He's one of the most entertaining fighters we've ever seen, and now he has the most knockouts in UFC history once again. I mean, he's had that record multiple times. Him and Matt Brown have just been shuffling back and forth for the past few years on that one. We'll see who ends up with the lead in that one. A hunch tells me that it's probably going to be Derek Lewis, just because of the power that man possesses. Just unreal. I think this does put him back into the title picture. I get that maybe he's not as appealing as a guy as some of these other rising stars like Aspinall or Almeida or Pavlovich, but Derek Lewis is a big star in this sport, man, and he's always close. It's funny. I know you were talking like you really put it perfectly, because if this fight went a different way and Derek Lewis lost, we might be talking about, is this it for Derek Lewis? Now we're saying he's one or two knockouts away from possibly another crack at the title.
Yeah.
I don't know if he gets there. Time will tell with that. I'll never count out a guy who hits that hard. I'm sorry. I get that he's older, but if that dude hits anyone clean on the chin, it's over. So, as we saw in this fight, I mean, that flying knee wasn't even like to the temple or anything. He landed it to just like his mouth almost. Because if you watch the replay, he landed it to like the face. It wasn't like the chin. It wasn't the side of his head. So
But dude, freaking
just the power.
Doing that at 263 pounds, exactly. Like that's like getting hit by a truck, no matter who you are. So,
yeah, dude, so crazy.
Yeah, chuck straight to the mouth. So.
And De Lima was literally saying before the fight, he's like, "I'm not gonna let him get a shot off," and I'm like, "He didn't let you get a shot off, dude." Like, he probably took that one personally,
yeah,
honestly.
Dude, he definitely like used that against him.
And good for him, honestly, for that. I don't think anybody is mad at a Derek Lewis knockout win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe I had to make a little pivot in the game plan overnight. Like,
I wonder how serious he is about that being just a spur of the moment thing. Because with anyone else, I'd be like, that's bullshit. But with Derek Lewis, I'm like, there's a tiny chance, but it's there. Like, I think there's a chance that he might not have planned that.
I don't know. I just there's not much more to say. Like usually, I mean, like typically, obviously with a flying knee, it's like, okay, like you gotta calculate it. You gotta make sure like it's gonna land square like on the chin and putting out, like it's gonna Ben Askren somebody. Like, sorry, I had to use his name just as the example, but
Hey man, Masvidal was there too. It was cool to see something like that, with the man in attendance. It was something else, dude. That's all I can really say about it.
Hell yeah.
But
so that was fun as hell.
Great win for Derek Lewis. So we'll see where he goes next. I think hopefully another striker. That'd be kind of cool. See him stand and bang with somebody at heavyweight with his new physique, his new six-pack. But
Derek Lewis is most certainly a man of the people. Like, dude, he delivered the his
Yeah, we gotta
balls
talk
were
about the
hot.
celebration,
His,
man.
his balls were hot again, man. That's how you know it's a huge win. So.
Threw the gloves in the crowd too. Some fans got some nice souvenirs. I don't know, man. Derek Lewis is one of the
He's
best.
a showman.
Yeah. Couldn't have said that better myself. But let's get into the next fight a little bit. I would say the mood on this one is probably a little bit more depressing. Just because, we were just speaking about showman.
That's fighting for you.
Yeah, man. I mean, Tony Ferguson takes his 6th straight loss. Gets put to sleep with an arm triangle.
This one was, man, it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, he looked good in the first couple minutes until the eye poke. He did blame the eye poke too, which I didn't like from him because you're not taking account of, I'm sure that eye poke mattered when you were on your back getting beat up. You know what I mean? It's like he shot some takedowns in that fight that looked amateur for Tony Ferguson's level.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like, again, it was going to be just another Tony Ferguson flirt. And it was, actually another Tony Ferguson flirt because he had Bobby Green knocked down. And then he let him get up.
Big knockdown, too.
Big knockdown, then he let him get up. That at that point was kind of just when I started to kind of question the things about dude, what's going on with Tony? Well, it's still early. All right, he's got a game plan. He wants to stick to it. Sure, but that didn't seem like the case. Really at all. It seemed like Bobby Green was just taking everything that Tony was giving to him, and man, it's just this is one of the most unprecedented losing streaks ever. I feel.
Yeah, it's sad because Tony Ferguson really just looked awful through most of this fight.
Yeah, and bro.
He looked slower on the feet.
Yeah, literally right after the knockdown in the first round, and then he let Bobby Green get back up. It's that's pretty much when the eye poke happened, and then now you have him pretty much calling back the eye poke and blaming it you were just.
Yeah, he's like Bobby Green has done things like this throughout his career. I'm like,
nah, man, that was not. Yeah,
it's not promising because if we see him fight again, I'm not gonna be confident in the fact that he's righted any wrongs.
It just seems like he just keeps slipping lower and lower down the card, and it's dude, a guy like Tony Ferguson, one of the most polarizing champions of the freaking 2010s, how the hell did we get here so
well, not even champion, just interim champion. The fact that he never got an actual undisputed title shot is unbelievable, to say the least. 12 straight wins and not one crack at that undisputed title.
That's crazy to me. Yeah.
I mean, Conor McGregor's to blame for some of that because him coming up to lightweight was around that time, and then, just misfortune, tripping over the cord versus Khabib, the pandemic with the other fight versus Khabib. It's just... It's
I don't
just
know.
Terrible,
yeah,
man.
Luck has definitely played its role, but
not anymore though. Now it's just
not
age.
Anymore.
When you look that slow on the feet against a guy who's another veteran like you, and I get that Bobby Green has insane boxing, and I don't even want to take away from Bobby Green because this was one of the bigger wins of his career. His hands looked great, especially in rounds 2 and 3. It's just Tony Ferguson, man, he just doesn't look like he should be fighting guys at this level anymore. He's, I believe he's 38 or 39 at this point. I'm about to look it up. He's 39. That doesn't bode well at these lighter weight classes, man. And you're losing against guys who are, around your era. Bobby Green's a veteran in this sport, and he made Tony look like he was done. It was just really bad, man. It was probably... If I had to pick, this might have been the worst performance of the losing streak. And I know he had his moment in this fight, and he's been dominated in the past by Oliveira and Dariush, but he didn't look so done in those fights. You know what I mean? After those fights, I was kind of he could still win a couple. But after this one, man, I don't know how much better it gets for him. I just don't. I mean, he had... couple good elbows on the feet early and some nice counter twos, but after the first round there was just basically nothing on the feet and on the ground. Like I said in the beginning, he shot some takedowns later in this fight that I have no idea what he thought was going to happen.
Yeah, man. Before it was Tony Ferguson's the guy that's going to take one and give it back to you that much harder, but now he's just taking it, and he that's it. He just takes it. There's no, like, there's hardly any resistance. There's hardly just like he just looks exactly. He's just done.
The saddest
he just
part,
looks done out there.
He's still doing everything that he used to do. Like, even when he was on his back, he was landing elbows, but it's just like the effect of them is so different now. Like, guys just aren't getting cut up, and they're not in pain from them. I mean, Bobby Green was landing just massive hammer fists on Tony Ferguson through that.
Just using him as a freaking punching bag. Like, that was crazy.
That was a sad one to watch. Like, it really was. You know, I'm happy for Bobby Green because he deserves a fight like this and a win like this. But for a guy like Tony Ferguson, you know,
it was, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this fight was definitely made, you know, for both guys to go out there and just leave it all out there and just, you know, obviously still have your head up, you know, have your head up high, like, afterwards, that, all right, you know, you just gave it everything you got. Great fight, potential fight of the night, you know, bonus. Like,
I just don't think the UFC figured that Tony would look that bad. Like, I don't know if they thought he would win.
I don't think really. Yeah, that's why I had to just, you know, mention, like, as far as like this being like the most just shocking, like, you know, downfall like we've seen from a fighter. Like, it's up there.
Yeah, man. Ever since that Gaethje fight, it's just been different. And I think it's that mixed with the fact that he's getting older. I mean, we see pretty much, I think the stat is something along the line. It's like 3 and 100 and something with guys fighting for the title above age 36 in like the welterweight or lower. So like the odds aren't in Tony's favor. He's 39 now, fighting at 155. Even if he decided to fully go up to 170, I don't think that goes any better. I think that actually might be worse if he goes up there because they'll be fighting guys that are more powerful.
It sucks too because, like, you know, the more he keeps fighting, like, the more he's risky. You know, not just because obviously, like, I think, you know, I would, at least I'll speak for myself when I say I would like to see Tony Ferguson keep fighting, but I don't want to keep seeing him fight. You know, really, like, any of these. Just because he's like, he's finished as a lightweight, at least, like, he's done. Like, I don't know, something's gotta, because I don't want to.
Who do you even give him? Like, you can give him
exactly
Jim Miller, Clay Guida, like guys like that. Maybe even them, I wouldn't be certain. Like, maybe Clay Guida, but Jim Miller, I think, could even beat Tony at this point.
A win over Tony Ferguson just isn't, like, you know, that it's just not a needle mover anymore.
Yeah, well, that's why you see it's funny that everybody calls him out now, and then, like, when he was in his win streak, nobody was mentioning Tony Ferguson. It's sad to see. I mean, he's a legend of the sport. He was 26
he'll hardly
and
get
3.
any credit for it now because it's just
the resume
exactly.
It's not looking good as time goes on. You know, when you're before the pandemic, right? Before he fought Khabib, he was 26 and 3. Now he's 26 and 9. That's so different. It's so different.
That really is a long fucking time.
And we're talking like it's been, you know, we're in 2023. That was 2020. In the span of a few years, he's had 6 losses and he's almost at double digits.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't really. Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
I think it's just better now than to, because, like, yeah, dude. Like, the next loss would be double digits. It's like, do you really want to, like?
Do you want to go there?
Yeah, man.
Who do you even want to see him fight at this point? Like I said, Clay Guida is somebody who's another OG. I think that Tony could do well in that fight. But at this point, you don't even know. It's really sad to see, man.
Dude, that's crazy. Like, you know, for even for Clay Guida to still be fighting 2023. Now you're talking about Tony Ferguson. You're not even, like, 100% that Tony Ferguson can win that fight, and wow, or even, like, put up even much of like a shot against Clay Guida.
I want to see him against guys like that, though, if he's gonna keep fighting. Like, if they're gonna keep putting him up against guys who are pretty good these prospects, it's just, I don't see it going any better.
Exactly.
You know, Jim Miller is a guy I wouldn't mind seeing because Jim Miller is another OG. He's pretty active and he's been winning fights. I know we know he wanted to fight on UFC 300. Could that be something? Ferguson versus Jim Miller. See, that's a fight though. I don't know if Ferguson will win, which is like like a few years ago. It's wild. Like you never even would have thought that. And that's not even disrespect to Jim Miller. It's just respect to how good Tony Ferguson really was in his prime. And
Yeah, man,
it's
I don't
just
know.
now, man, it's tough. You're watching him at the press conferences too, like just the things that there's a different tone to it. Like in the past, he was very kind of playful with it, just having fun. Now he just seems a little more irritated at all times. I don't know. It just hasn't looked good. And then, like I said, after this fight, blaming the eye poke right off the bat, it's not a good look, man, for the future. I'm saying it just doesn't
Yeah,
make me
I
think
don't
that things
know.
are going to get much better. But let's move on to the last fight that we're going to talk about on the main card with Kevin Holland. He had probably the best performance of his career versus Michael Chiesa, submitting a submission specialist, especially from a guy like
Yeah, what the hell?
Kevin Holland, dude. At 185, we saw some massive problems in the grappling department. I think it's safe to say that he's heavily improved there. His striking looked good. His grappling looked good. That's why I say I think this was the best performance of his career because Chiesa is not a bad fighter. I know he's had a bit of a layoff and he's coming off of a couple losses. But to do that to a guy like Chiesa is just really impressive to me. I mean, the striking, his timing was incredible. It seemed like he was landing uppercuts and 1-2s at will, and then on the ground just cinching that choke as quickly as he did.
Yeah.
Unreal, man. Such a good performance for the Trailblazer. What did you think of this one for Kevin Holland, dude?
Yeah, bro. Like, I think, dude, like, when like that over that opponent, like, you got. I mean, dude, I think you gotta push the guy. Like, you gotta give him just his next fight. Like, probably the biggest fight of his career. If not one of the biggest fights of his career. So, um, that's that. Like, he is found himself. I think truly as a welterweight. So
He said he wants to go back up to 185 though too. I don't know if he's being serious about that.
I will no. I wouldn't. I think he's found himself here.
I would love to see him keep fighting at 170. If he goes up to 185, I don't think he'd necessarily do bad, but I agree with what
I
you're
don't know.
saying.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't. Yeah, man.
It's like been there, done that,
Yeah.
Yeah, why do we need to like the contenders are still similar for the most part. The only guy like really 185 that I would want to see him up against is Sean Strickland, who might be fighting for the title at this point. So I don't really think any of the matchups make as much sense. Like I was looking at the rankings before we even started today, and I didn't like how usually if there's somebody that I have in mind, I'll write it down and bring it up. But for this one, it's just I don't really see anybody who I'm that keen on.
I think he's gotta go for a welterweight title like run. At least try to get that opportunity. So
It's tough. I don't know. It's tough at both weight classes. I mean, he's in two of the better weight classes in the sport at this point. He beat Chiesa now, who is ranked number 12. So he's going to be in the top 15 for sure. You could argue he deserves a top 10 opponent next. I mean, we don't need to see Wonder Boy again. Luque is going to be fighting RDA. I wouldn't mind seeing him versus the winner of that fight. That'd be a really fun one. I think they're fighting at the end of August, I want to say. Could be wrong about that. But they're fighting like before the end of the summer for sure. So timeline-wise, it should add up. I wouldn't mind seeing that because, Luque is exciting to watch. I think that would be a fun fight for the striking. And then if RDA wins, yeah, he's a really good grappler, but he's also a little smaller because he's coming up from 155. And I don't know. I think Kevin Holland has more options at 170. I agree with you on that one. I think then moving on to the Chiesa's side of it, I didn't like how he looked in this fight, to be honest. I don't think that he's done. Kevin Holland said that he thinks he should retire. I don't really agree with that. I think coming off a long layoff, he looked rusty. Like I think that's fair to say that he was rusty. Because on the feet, it just looked like he was a step slower. He was reacting so much more to every shot that was landing. And I know Kevin Holland has like crazy power, especially at 170. But I don't know. He didn't look great on the feet. In terms of the grappling, this was as bad as he's looked in a long time, I'd say. I don't know where you go with him next. I think maybe a step back just to see where he's at would be smart. But I don't know. What did you think of what Kevin Holland was saying? Because let me say this too. He did say that it wasn't that he thinks he has nothing left. It was more just because he's like, you're getting paid also to commentate and do this work on the ESPN broadcast, and he's like said it respectfully. He's like, you're really good on television. You're getting paid for that. You're not probably gonna make a run at the title, so why are you even bothering doing this? Like, why hurt yourself when you're gonna get paid anyway? And I see it from that perspective, but I'm never going to be the type, just like, we're sitting here talking about fights. I'm never going to tell a guy that should retire. Like, even with Tony Ferguson, I didn't say that. You could have your opinion, but at the end of the day, it's up to the fighter. Mm-hmm. But sorry, I kind of like went on a tangent there. But what do you think of what Holland was saying about Chiesa's future?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fair. Like, kind of like you just summed it up. We're not really in the right to, say like what Michael Chiesa should do and what he shouldn't, but it's a decision at the end of the day. I mean, I think more like it was like a long layoff. I think at least like, maybe give it a few more fights. I don't know how many more, but a few more fights. Give him a good match. Good matchups. Like he should win and go from there. So I think that's fair.
It's a tough spot for Michael Chiesa. I mean, it's his third straight loss, all against good opponents, though. So we'll see what's next with him. We'll talk a tiny bit about the prelims, and then we'll be on our way here. So the only ones that I really wanted to mention, Gabriel Bonfim, for one, is a welter. We were talking about welterweight just now. Welterweight prospects to watch. 15-0. Finishes Trevin Giles with an insane guillotine. He's something, man. And then last week we were talking at the end of the episode about Uros Medic versus Matthew Semmelsberger. If you guys didn't get to see that fight, watch that fight because I was right. It lived up to the hype. It was a war while it lasted in the early prelims, and then Medic hit Semmelsberger with that insane spinning back fist. So hats off to those guys. I mean, that was a fun fight. I'm glad that it lived up to the hype. I hope at least a few people got to watch it based on what we were saying. But all in all, this was a really fun pay-per-view, really fun weekend of fights. I'll ask you this, just to close it off before I do a tiny bit of a preview for next week. What do you enjoy more, Spence versus Crawford or UFC 291?
That's a good question. I think Spence Crawford was. I think they both had their own right to be like. I think they just both delivered, but it was just like that, like finally for Spence and Crawford finally throwing down and to get a clear winner too, no debate, obviously just as marquee of a fight as it's gonna get. So
yeah, that definitely had that big fight feel to it. I would agree, honestly. I enjoyed the main event of that boxing card more. And UFC 291 was insane. Let's just be clear. So I mean, any weekend that we could talk about boxing and the UFC and they both hit like that, that's always a good feeling, dude. And next week should be really fun too. The UFC, we have a fun main event. Corey Sandhagen versus, and this feels so fun to say, friend of the show, Rob Font.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to get him back on. But, that's going to be a crazy fight.
His first fight since
the interview
he showed up. So.
Check that out if you guys haven't seen it already. We filmed that after his last win when he knocked out Adrian Yanez. But hopefully we'll be able to film another after this one. He's going to be fighting Corey Sandhagen. That's probably going to be a war. And we'll be back next week to cover it. So we'll see you all then.